So today is July 20th, 2024. We are with Jerry and Donna Fountain of the Globe 2nd Ward. We'd like to start with Sister Fountain. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, your growing up, and that sort of thing?
Okay. I'll start with my grandparents. My grandparents were from the Safford Valley. My great-grandparents had a feed store in Claypole. And so my mom was born in the Safford Valley. My father was raised behind the old Catholic church in Miami, way up on those canyons. So my parents met when my mom came to see her grandparents here. And they got married in the Fort Thomas church, and then my dad shipped out with the Navy just a couple of days later. I was born in San Diego, California, when my dad was in the service. And then I lived in Hawaii. Yeah, World War II. And then I lived in Hawaii when my dad was stationed over there. And then we came back here. And my grandparents were members of the church. They were not active. My parents weren't active. My dad wasn't a member. My grandmother was an angel. She was Nell Billingsley, which many people in the state know the Billingsleys. And in fact, she was in the Ward Relief Society presidency in Pima before she was baptized. So that's been a long year ago. But she was a woman of service. So I grew up in this town in Miami. Like I said, it was before the days every kid had a car. So I didn't know Jerry. We went to different schools. He went on that side of the track, and I went on this side of the track, and we didn't meet until high school. So that's when he came into my life.
So let's go back a little bit. You say your parents weren't active in the church?
No, they weren't.
How did you become active in the church?
I became active in the church because my mother, is the oldest of 8 children. I had 6 amazing aunts and her brothers, and some of them were really an influence to me. And I went with my grandparents. I would get up and walk over the hill to my grandparents' house many Sundays and go with them when they started going. I remember one thing, my mother would not curl my hair Saturday night, and I'd think, I can't do this. And I'd get up Sunday morning and go to my grandma's, and she would put braids in my hair, and away I'd go to church with them. I wasn't baptized till I was 12. I was baptized with 2 of my mother's siblings, and that's when I became active. And it just was always there for me. I stayed active, and my parents eventually got active in the church.
Who baptized you?
I think it was Leonard Haney. If I remember, I haven't looked at the records for a long time. He was an influential person in my life, he and Gwen. And we went to the Miami Ward, and I just did everything there. Went to seminary and Sunday school, and Nita Blake and Nelda Gordon and Delda Rubacava were my mentors, and they were wonderful, wonderful examples.
Tell us about seminary.
Seminary was in high school. It was in the old high school up on the hill. We walked down the ramp to this little old house for seminary. And in those days, it was called Release Seminary. And if you went 4 years, you got 1 credit. If you dropped out, went 3 years, then you lost your credit. So when you signed up for seminary, it was a serious thing. And our high school principal, he was all about seminary. He was a big guy, and he got those Mormon kids in his office and said, you guys will go to seminary. He was Nick Regas. He was amazing.
Amazing guy.
Was he a member of the church?
Oh, no. Oh, heavens, no.
Hungarian.
Yeah, he was just an amazing man.
Okay. So when you were growing up, going to the church, you were in the Miami Ward.
Yes, a little old building.
And tell us about the building.
It was just a little old building. It had a chapel, and then it had a activity, culture hall, and they were joined in the back by a hall. And that was great. I was sad when they tore it down because it had so many memories. In fact, we were married in that building.
When it rained, it leaked.
And when it rained, it leaked. But it was a wonderful place to be. And
did it have classrooms?
Oh yeah, it had not a lot of them. And I led primary music when I was, 8th grade freshman. Loved it. Beal Colvin taught us all to dance, all the different dance steps at the primary dances, and we had a good old time down there.
You say your parents eventually became active in the church.
Yes, they did.
What led
Yes,
to
they
their
did.
activity?
I think my dad was always very supportive. He let us kids go. He wanted us to go. He supported everything. And then I don't know what led to it, but they eventually became active and went to the temple. And my dad was raised kind of in a rough area, a rough time, a rough situation. And when he joined the church, he just mellowed. When he got grandkids, he tried everything on me. And then when he got grandkids, he was this wonderful, wonderful grandfather.
He was in World War II for 5 years.
Yeah, it was a tough time.
Torpedoes hitting his ship and that sort of thing, and lost so many of his friends. And
Yeah.
I think war, just like I had an uncle that was in the Death March of Bataan. And when you talk to these people, their view of life is so different. To have been able to see and be part of that horrible war. And I know it affected Donna's dad. And I think, that took him a while to get through that, years, in fact, before he joined the church.
So when you were growing up, he wasn't a member of the church?
No, he wasn't.
So your mother was a less active member?
She was. My mother was a very mild, sweet person, and my dad was a little on the gruffer side.
Quite
So,
rough.
quite the gruff one. So
How about when did he join?
he joined after we were married. So he was in his, I don't know, almost 60 probably. He went through several sets of missionaries. And this is what I told our elders when they were here dinner the other night. My dad went through several sets of missionaries, listened to the lessons. He supported us, but he was the commander of the VFW in Miami. And that's where he was a lot of the time. And but he met an elder that connected with him. And I firmly believe that when you go on a mission, there's someone maybe that you are supposed to connect with. And my dad met his elder, and that was it. When he joined, 100%. He was great.
Yeah.
So I know we're going to get to Brother Fountain in a minute, but did your dad and Sister Fountain join the church after Brother Fountain joined the church?
Yes.
No, he didn't join the church after, did he?
Yeah.
But they went to the temple after we did. It was probably around my dad. I don't remember if you were first or he was first.
No, I was
It
first.
was about, just right close.
Yeah.
He kind of liked
Been a
Jerry.
year
He would
or two.
never admit it, but he liked him a lot.
We had a great relationship, but
Yeah.
it was some of the language that came from his side of the fence wasn't so good, but we had a great
You'd be
time.
nice, Jerry. Be nice.
We loved each other tremendously.
He was raised differently.
Yeah.
Just raised differently, and he spoke beautiful Spanglish. I was always amazed at that because we'd meet his buddies downtown, and one minute I'd understand him, and the next minute I didn't. But he had some good experiences. He was a good, real big-hearted guy. Everybody loved him.
Before we go to Brother Fountain, Sister Fountain, any particular activities or things like that growing up that stand out? I know at that time we were still part of the
St. Joseph.
St. Joseph Stake and Thatcher. Anything in particular?
Well, we loved the
traveling
road
back and
shows.
forth?
We loved the road shows, and that was a big thing. We
Went to the big road show over to Safford.
we were right in the middle of that.
Amazing road show too.
Yeah, but
We had a flag that was about as big as this wall right here.
Yeah.
Huge.
the road shows were a
We
big
had it
thing.
behind the stage.
The dances were a big thing because I grew up to be a dance teacher for 45 years. I loved the music and the dancing, and that was a big, the activities I think are what brings the kids in. I had numerous friends that came to the church and were baptized, and I think it was because Mormon kids were a lot of fun.
So when you talk about dances and activities, growing up, did you end up having stake dances and activities in Thatcher? I mean, did you have to go all the way out there?
I don't remember
A lot
any
of them
steak in Thatcher. I don't remember that. We did go to a Western someplace. They took us up and we Western danced. I love that. And, so we,
My recollection is there were a few, but not many at all.
yeah.
But
Well, I started when I was in primary. Yeah.
From here.
I started when I was in primary dancing, and I didn't meet him till, long time. And he couldn't dance.
Thank you. I can't.
Well,
I can ride a horse. I can do all kinds of things, but I can't dance. It looks kind of silly. I can waltz. That's about it.
well, that's a skill that a lot of people don't have. So. Well, Brother Fountain, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, because it's different. You didn't
They're
grow
so
up
different.
as a member of the church. Obviously, you became a wonderful member of the church. But tell us about your background, where you grew up, how you grew up, a little bit about your family.
Yeah. Well, my father was born in Arkansas, and his mom and dad had 11 kids. He was the oldest of 11 kids. And
Come on.
when he was 3 years old, the Depression hit. And they were really in terrible shape, hungry all the time and everything else. And finally his dad took my grandpa, my dad's dad, took him out of school, and he took his next oldest son out of school. And the three of those would go out into the broomcorn fields. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's what they make brooms with. And they worked there for at least 3 years, from sunup to sundown, 7 days a week, making 50 cents a day. So they made $1.50 a day. And that's what got them through the Depression. But the Depression, like the war, World War II, really impacted people's lives forever. My dad was so concerned about money and having a little bit of money and being able to live with a little bit of comfort and that sort of thing. But at any rate, they moved. My dad, I'm trying to remember, my dad moved to Oklahoma, and there he fell in love with my mother, and they were married. And my dad was called to World War II, and he stayed stateside, which was good, but they lived in St. Louis for a couple of years until the war was over. And then he and my uncle, the one that was in the war, March of '10, decided they'd heard about California and how wonderful it is, and so they decided to move to California, which they did, and they worked in the shipyards, still repairing ships and building ships and all that kind of stuff. And after about 2 years, they decided, this is not so good. This isn't the great land that we thought was going to be here. So they moved to Baghdad, and that's not Baghdad, Iraq. A lot of people think so, but it's Baghdad, Arizona. And that's where I was born. And I had two older sisters. They're both 2.5 and 5 years older than me. And later on, I had another sister. She was 13 years younger than me. But at any rate, when we first moved into Globe, there used to be the old project houses where Walmart is today. And at any rate, there were probably 40 of these fourplexes, and we lived in one of those fourplexes. I can even remember being out in the yard one day, and somebody was yelling and screaming, and there was a little boy that had been run over by a pickup, crushed his head, and he was dead. And that was one of Mark Schellenberger's brothers. And so, here's somebody we didn't even know then that we know now. But at any rate, we lived there for about 2 years, and then my dad decided he needed to buy some land. He worked in Baghdad for about 2 years, and
Was he in the mine there?
He was in the mine, and they put him in the analytical laboratory. My mother had gone to school and graduated from high school, and my dad graduated from third grade by force. But my mom taught my dad how to write. She taught him mathematics. And so when he got to Baghdad and he went to work there in an analytical lab, he really fit into the thing. He worked there 2 years. And then they decided to move to Globe, and he found out that there was an analytical job in Miami Copper Company. So he came out and got the job. And he worked in that job for 25 years or so. And then when Pinto Valley started up again, they sent him out as the chief chemist for the mine. And that's pretty neat that you have somebody that has a third grade education and ends up as chief chemist in a mine. And then even later on, when he retired, he was out there for about 10 years, and he built his own laboratory at our house in Schultz Ranch. And he and I ran that he ran it for about 10 years, and I was helping him for about 5 years, and I was doing all the analytical analysis along with him, doing all the sampling and crushing and that sort of thing. My mom was an angel. My dad was my hero. Everything that he did, I was 1 or 2 steps behind him. And he had an old mine that he leased, and he and I ran that mine ourselves, started it up and operated it, and I learned so much from my dad. But he was such a kind man. He was a preacher. He was not. We had nobody in our family that was LDS. Didn't even know what LDS was. And so at any rate, he had a couple of partners out at this mine 2 different times, and both of them cheated him out of what money he had, and they were LDS. And so he was totally opposed to LDS people. But at any rate, he and I were we were just as close as a father and son could be. And he died at 94, and we kept his house out there and kept him there, our family, until he passed. And my mom had passed about 8 years earlier, 83, I think, and he was 92 when he passed. But he was my hero, and taught me so much about life and about, you name it, anything. He was a very inquisitive sort of a guy, an entrepreneur type of a guy, just amazing. So at any rate, I graduated from high school, and I'll let Donna pick up a little bit after this, but I went down to the University of Arizona and went to school there. And we had met when I was a junior and she was a sophomore. Why don't you tell him how all of that happened? That's funny.
It was the end of his junior year, and we had pep club, and the girls got to invite the guys. And like I said, I was a little chatty Cathy, and Jerry was kind of a little country kid.
I was an absolute introvert all my life.
Quiet.
I was 25.
Now you can't hush him. But he, anyway, my girlfriend had issued an invitation to him. I didn't really know him, to go to this pep club formal. And he wouldn't answer, and he and his cool friends hung around. So finally she put me up to going up to him and saying, "Hey, are you going to accept this invitation?" So I pranced up there and said, are you going to go to this dance? And he said, "No, I can't do it." And I thought he was awful, and so that was the end of that. Then day by day, we'd kind of walk by in the halls, and sometimes he'd look and sometimes he'd smile, and once in a while he'd say hi. And anyway, little by little, we got acquainted, and then I was majorette with the band, and after a football game, we came down on the field together, and he asked if he could take me home. There wasn't a dance that night for some reason. He asked if he could take me home, and so I went up to my parents and introduced him, and I hardly knew him, and my mother had the Billingsley humor, and I said, "Mom, this is Jerry Fountain. Can I go home with him?" And my mother stepped back and she said, "Well, I don't think you should go home with him." Embarrassed me to death. But anyway, I went to my home, and that's how it started. And then we finished school, and he went to U of A, and I finished up there. But Miss Jackson, we loved Miss Jackson.
Yes, teacher.
And when I was a senior in high school, we've laughed about this, and our kids laughed about it. I was a senior in high school, and all my little group of girlfriends, and walking down the hall, and Miss Jackson came up, and she started talking to us, and she said, "Now you date that Fountain boy, don't you?" And yeah, I do. I thought he was real smart. And she said, "Well," and I said, "What?" And finally she says, "Well, you're just so, well, he's reserved and mature and so studious and quiet, and you're so," and we all burst out laughing because I was so. But we've said our roles have changed. I used to be the most talkative. Now wherever we go, I can't get him out because he meets everybody and talks to them. But that's how we met, and we went to all the proms and all the ball games and everything in high school. It was just a fun time.
So Brother Fountain went to U of A, and
And then I got a scholarship. I finished my senior year here, and I had a scholarship to beauty college down there. And I went and lived with my aunt and uncle. He had a roommate, and I will tell you this, he was 18 years old, and he was a sophomore in college. He finished a year and a half of college before he turned 19. He was very, very young. We were too young, but we did it. We plowed through it, and we made it, and here we are 58 years later.
So when did you decide to get married?
When I graduated from high school. Well,
No.
you decide sooner than that? I didn't know it.
Well, we talked about marriage when I was a senior.
Oh, yeah, but you were a senior. No, not when I was a senior.
Now, when I was a senior, we talked about it. And then I went to school, and of course, I would come home a lot of times on weekends, and we'd get together. And so I proposed to her, and she says, "I can't.
Oh.
I cannot marry you until you turn 19.
Oh, that's right.
I was 18. And she just flat would not marry me. And I was upset. But at any rate.
And we married one day after his 19th birthday.
We have Christmas. Well, Christmas Eve and Christmas. And then my birthday is on the 28th of December. Our anniversary is on the 29th of December. And we married on the 29th because that was the
day after your birthday.
I turned 19. And then we have New Year's Eve and New Year's. So we have quite a holiday every year.
We do.
But that's when we got married and how we got married.
So were you still at U of A when you got married?
Yes, oh yeah.
We moved to Tucson, and we were there for
Tucson's where he was baptized.
3 years. That's where I was
Tucson's where he was baptized. I was at school when he was home. He was at school when I was home, which was nice because I wasn't there to push him. He did it himself.
I had some classes during the days that I didn't have anything to do, and so we had a little apartment about 10 blocks from the university. And I had an old Oldsmobile, 1988 Oldsmobile 88.
That never ran.
Always working on it. So I had it out on the street. My apartment's here. And I was working on it, and all of a sudden I see a couple of people walking toward me, and I look at them, they're kind of funny. They got badges on and all that kind of stuff. And it was two missionaries. And they said, we're missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. We'd like to talk with you. And I thought, she was a Mormon, and I thought, I like what I see there. I'm going to take those lessons. So I took, what was it, 7 lessons?
I don't know how many. He didn't tell me.
And at the end of that, and this took, probably 2 months to get it all in. And the missionary finally said, "Would you like to be baptized?" And I looked at him and I thought, I said, "Yes, I would." So Donna came home from class that day, and I told her, "Donna, I'm going to get baptized."
On Saturday. On Saturday. I'm getting baptized Saturday.
And I thought she was going to fall over. She just could not believe that I'd gone through. through the missionary lessons without her even knowing that.
It was good.
And so, at any rate, that was in Tucson.
So what was your reaction when you
I
found
was
out
shocked. Well, I had given him, back when he was in college, we went to a wedding and it was somebody from his church. I don't know who it was. And we came out of there and he said, "Are we going to get married there?" And that's when I told him no, but I gave him an Article of Faith card. And he read that Article of Faith card and he goes, "Well, I've believed these things all my life." And so, and I'm sorry to say, but back then we were not encouraged, as I encouraged my kids, date someone of your own religion. I mean, he was a good person. His standards were good. His family was wonderful. And, but I've told my kids I took a big chance, because things wouldn't have turned out as smoothly had he not embraced the gospel. And I know it, I know
I
it.
remember that card, and my dad was a Pentecostal person, very, very religious his entire life.
It was wonderful.
Had his own church for about 4 years. And so that's all I knew was Pentecostal church. And went there until, this came about, and she had this little card, and I was reading it, and I said, yeah, I believe that. And I got down to the last one, isn't that Joseph Smith?
I don't know. It's
That's the last
frustration.
little thing.
That's
I said the one thing that I'm not sure that I can.
It wasn't on the Articles of
understand
Faith. It was just, yeah.
Was I don't know if I can believe in Joseph Smith. And so that kind of stunted us for a little while. But still, as we moved on, then things got much more clear, and
Yeah.
joined the church, and it was pretty neat.
Went on from there.
How did your father react?
My whole family was very negative about it, that I became a Mormon.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a lady who my mom knew very, very well, and this lady knew Donna very well.
She lived down the street from my
Lived down
family.
the street from her, and so one day they were visiting there at my house in Shills Ranch, and she was talking about, now your son is dating Donna Stewart, right? I said, yeah. She says, tell you what, you better nip this thing in the bud, because that girl's a Mormon girl. Never forgot that.
I think his family kind of thought I'd led him astray, but they're very respectful. We respect what they believe, and they respect what we believe. And he came from a good family, a more religious background than what I had in my home, really. So
You've already expressed what a close relationship you have with your dad, and how much you respect and admire him. Was that difficult? You joined the church, and you said they were kind of negative. How did you get through all that?
I think it was just that
mutual respect.
it was mutual respect. I mean, they were happy that I was going to church, even though it may not have been their church. But over the years, if there was ever a problem in the family, somebody was sick, whatever, I was the person they called to come give them a blessing. And that went on and on and on. And finally, I think the entire family was quite open to the fact that we were members of the LDS Church. And my dad, who loved the Bible, and Revelation was his book. He was in the hospital for about a week, and I'd go down every day and stay with him. And he said, Jerry, see if there's what are those books?
Gideon
See if there's a
Bible.
Gideon Bible over there in that drawer. Okay. Well, yeah, there was. So I said, what do you want to read? And I knew what he was going to say. He said, let's read Revelations. And my dad had quite a different view of Revelations than what I did. And of course, I'd been in the church for years. And so he started, I said, okay, you read the first verse, and then we'll discuss it. You tell me what you think of it, and then I'll tell you what I think of it. And over a week, we went through Revelations, scripture by scripture, him giving me his understanding of what it meant, and me giving him my understanding of what it meant. And by the end of that week, I knew that my dad was going to be baptized in the hereafter, and he's going to understand what the LDS Church was all about. He became a Mormon in that 1 week. I'll never forget it.
Well, and I'll add here, we did their work in the temple,
Yep.
and we've done several in the temple. The day we were sealed for his parents, I knew his mom was there. And I've told everybody in the family, I knew Granny was there. And she was always a little shy one, but I felt good going through the temple many times, but that day was special. You know, they were wonderful people. He told me before he died, he said, "Sweetheart, you're not my daughter-in-law, you're my daughter." He liked me to sing country western to him. We'd go in there and I'd sing my country western song. So he's up there. He's up there.
So, you were at the U of A in Tucson.
Mm-hmm.
How did you eventually get back here?
Well, after she finished school and I was a junior, finished my junior class, I ran out of money. And so we came back to...
We were always out of money.
Yeah. And so we came back to Globe, and I went to work in the mines. And I worked about a year, I guess. And then the big strike, 9-month strike. And so the mine was totally shut down for 9 months. Didn't have a job. So I went out of town to find a job, which I found. And while I was out of town, do you remember Lamar Kennard?
He loves that man.
I love that man. He went to work for Ranchers Exploration and Development, which was a mining company, even though it's called Ranchers Exploration. He was a big rancher. But anyway, he purchased the old Bluebird mine, and technology was rapidly improving over the years. And there was a new process for getting copper out of leach solution and plating it into 4/9 copper plate. And Lamar called on, and he wanted to talk to me. And so when I got home, I came home that weekend from building the golf course in Lake Havasu City, very first one. And so I called him, and he interviewed me, told me all about this new technology, and that the plant is now being built. And he wanted me to be a shift supervisor in the startup of the plant. And of course, I took that. I was making $2 an hour at Bluebird. I got a 50-cent raise or something like that. And they sent me to the School of Mines in Colorado. And we were up there for a couple of months, 4 of us. And we went through technical training for this process and physical training for this process. And so we went through all of that, came back. We started the thing up, and it was an amazing technology. And it was the first SXEW plant in the world, and now there's some plus 200 in the world, and they produce about 35% of the world's copper. So that was something that, Lamar Kennard,
Yeah, he was wonderful.
God's hand had to be in that.
He was wonderful.
So it was really neat. So we stayed there for, I think it was 2.5 years. And then there was another man, General Mills Cereal Company was the one that invented this new reagent of all things. And there was a guy that worked for General Mills that was working with us with the Bluebird startup and everything. Amazing man. He took me under his wing, and I'll never forget him. And he talked with another company in Casa Grande, Arizona, which was trying to build a plant and didn't know what they were doing. They manufactured copper wiring, but they were trying to buy old scrap, dissolve it, and replate it and use that in the rod plant. Didn't work. But at any rate, they talked to the guy. He talked to the guy down there, and I met with the president of the company, and he hired me to run that plant and to expand it. And I put an SX plant in there, which took care of all the problems. So we were there for 4 years, and then we moved to. There was a general manager at Inspiration Copper who had heard about this plant, and he came down and visited with me for a couple of hours. And he came back again 4 times. And the 4th time he came back, he brought a letter of employment and gave it to me. And it was twice the salary that I was making in Casa Grande. So I accepted that job and went to Inspiration Copper, and we built the big plants there, and I ran that whole thing for about 15, 20 years.
Went to Peru.
And then I went to Peru for 2 years to build another plant, another similar plant in Peru. And we spent about $150 million, which is a lot of money, in 1996. And so at any rate, that's, Lamar got me started in this pathway, and it's been great for me. And I know that Heavenly Father led us through all of this as well. And it was just an amazing life. I traveled the world so many times, looking at all different kinds of mines and everything else. And so I had a great career, and Lamar was responsible for it. And I saw so much and learned so much, but also traveling the world. Anytime I came home from a trip, the first thing I wanted to do was get off the plane and kiss the soil of the United States, because there's no country in the world like the United States. I've been behind the Iron Curtain. I've been all over the world, and there's nothing that compares to this country. And I had that opportunity, and I think Heavenly Father wanted me to have that opportunity to appreciate what we have.
So let's take you back to Globe again, and raising your family here in the Globe State. What are your thoughts about the church here? Raising the children. What do you think about all?
Well, I'll be honest. I used to think, oh my goodness, my sister's kids in the valley have all these opportunities. But I'll go back just for a minute to when I was in high school. For some reason, the church thought it would be a good idea to take the kids from Central Heights and put them in Globe. So there were only maybe 6 of us, and we weren't going to do it. We were rivals, really rivals. And so, stubborn little me, I wasn't going to do it. And the bishop called me and he said, if you will go and go with a good attitude, the kids will go, So we came to Globe. They didn't leave us over here very long because it was very hard to be going to different schools, but we came to Globe and we got acquainted with that's how I met all the Globe kids, and Bishop Burns was amazing, and, loved those people. So anyway, when we moved over here, it was very different to have my daughter's bedroom decorated in orange and black. She had pom-poms and whatever, and I had, my vandal blood boiled a little. Yeah, my vandal blood but my kids had great opportunities here, great leaders here. Couldn't have asked for better. We had several young men through our home that we knew that went on missions and that we still keep in touch with, and it was just it was just a good opportunity.
They probably wouldn't have if they wouldn't have been here with my wife and me and my daughter.
But I taught Sunday school, and I had 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, and I told them, I said, nobody gets out of this room with a white shirt and tie and a tag, and every single one of those boys served a mission. And then not too long ago, I don't know, time's passed, but we got a call, and it happened to be one of the Gordon boys. The Gordons were all downtown eating, and they had been talking, and their son, who was a bishop, said, people gave up on us, but Sister Fountain never did. So they called us and told us that, and that was a good thing. But my kids were very active in everything, and it was a good thing for him. I was glad that we were in a smaller town, more personal connection, and good people everywhere. But this was good for our family.
Now, one of the things we talked about before we started the tape was the fact that you were involved in the building of two chapels here, both the Miami Chapel and the Stake Center.
Mm-hmm.
Can you take us through some of that, some of the things that led up to, and maybe starting with the Miami Chapel, led up to that, different things you might have done, fundraising, those types of things?
Yeah, it was B.J. Cecil was the stake president at the time. And of course he had equipment, loaders and trucks and stuff like that, and backhoes.
I'm going to stop you for a second. You're talking about the Stake Center.
No, I'm talking about the Miami ward.
Oh.
And
You used BJ's equipment there?
I used BJ's equipment and I did foundations and all that kind of stuff. And then I think we had to put up half of the money. And of course, all the ladies have been making pasties and all that kind of stuff for years to get enough money to build Miami Chapel. But I remember working there for several months after work and sometimes on weekends. And there was probably 20, 30 of us out of the Miami ward.
Okay.
We spent a lot of time trying to help get that church built. Of course, they had a contractor and all that sort of thing, but we kind of worked with him, as I recall, and spent a lot of time in the Miami ward. We were never asked for any money there as we were in the Globe.
He was one of the younger guys working with the older guys, that supervised and just the labors.
Yeah. And then when it was a Globe board, well, let's stay at Miami for a little bit. We were back maybe a couple of years or 3, I don't remember, and they called and asked me to serve in the bishopric with Paul Frankham and Bud Kennard. And so we were there. I was in the bishopric there. I was 25 or 26 years old, not prepared for that calling. It scared me to death. But I think we were there for about 3 years. And then when we were released, some short time later, we had a ski boat and we loved water skiing. We were all out at the lake with the family. And one of the guys from Miami came driving up. I don't know how he knew where we were, but he said, "Stake President wants to talk to you." I said, "What?" So I said, "Okay." So I got my truck and drove all the way back to the Stake Center, and it was who was it? I can't remember which stake president it was. I think Ardell. It probably was Benny Joe Cecil. And he said that, you've been released from the bishopric and we want to place you on the High Council. I said, on the High Council? Yeah. And I wasn't sure what the High Council was at that point in time. So anyway, I was in the High Council there until we moved over to Globe. And then I was in the bishopric there in Globe with Don Allen and Clay Covey. And
back to the High Council.
And then when I was released from that, back to the High Council, I spent probably on and off 30 years on the High Council. And I told my wife she always complained that I'd take a week to get a talk together. I said, I don't want to say something that's not true. And so I would take sometimes 4 or 5, sometimes 6 days putting one of these talks together. And many years later, I was thinking about it, and I said, I added it up, and I said, I probably have given about 300 talks on the High Council. I couldn't believe that.
That's where you learned, though.
But that's where I learned a lot about the scriptures and the church, and the doctrines, and the history, and that sort of thing. And so it was a real growing opportunity for me over those 30 years. And I loved it. It was quite something.
What about the Stake Center building?
Stake Center, I worked on some things there. I was in the bishopric at the time, and one of my assignments was to, again, we had to come up, I think, with half the money for that building. I don't think we did in Miami, but we had to in Globe. And so our bishop asked us counselors to go out and see if we can collect some money for the church, for the building. And so they split it into three groups. I had one, and the other counselor had one, the bishop had one. And so I probably spent at least a month, if not two, calling people and having them come in and sit down with me and try to see if we can collect some money for the church. And there were a couple that really, were anxious to do that. But Shirley Dawson, his mother lived in this house down here. What was her name?
Vera Larson?
Vera Larson. And Brother Larson. I don't think he was a member at the time. May have been. But I called them in there. And so we talked for about 20 minutes about what was happening, building the chapel and all that sort of thing. And I remember asking, would you have any money that you might be willing to donate here to completing this chapel? And he looked at me and says, Stake Center, he says, well, how much do you need? I said, I can't tell you how much. I'm not asking you for a certain amount. I'm just saying, do you have any money that you'd like to donate? So he sat there and wrote me a $5,000 check. I couldn't believe it.
He's a neat man.
But he was a neat guy, cranky old guy at times, but really a neat guy. And just, I know he loved the church, and so did his good wife. But that was something that I was involved in. But I also spent some time, I think, when we poured the floor in the gym, the concrete was bad. And all these rocks started popping up above the concrete. And I think we went through and tried to get a bunch of those out. But I think ultimately we had to get a contractor to do that and then refinish the floor. But it had some big rocks in there that never should have been, but they're all starting to come loose and come out of the floor. But I don't remember what else. I don't know that I did. Most of that was done by contractor. And so my responsibilities were to try to get some money. And I remember we did some work up there. I just don't remember what it was. Pretty much what I remember.
Let me ask this. The two of you, and perhaps particularly Sister Fountain, is kind of known for different projects, always sort of being involved with a project. And I know we talked about this before, and Brother
there are
Fountain,
no small ones.
how you would get roped into these projects, and they became projects for both of you. Sister Fountain, do you want to tell us about this? Is this just something that's kind of
it just happens. It just happens.
Such a
Well,
creative woman.
I just enjoy those. I don't want to be on the stage, but I want to be, making somebody else do it. But we've done youth conference. We were co-chairmen with Margie and Ardell Ellsworth, and the next year we were chairman of it. For youth conference. We've done several plays.
Also in the 1976, was it?
The bicentennial. Bicentennial. We put on.
Asked us to serve with him. That was
5
months of work.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
We did a lot of that.
We've done Night in Bethlehem, and that kind of things. Recently, Paula Steinke and I are activities for the Relief Society, and we were going to just put on a simple walk with Christ. We used the whole church and set it up for just our Relief Society. I was sad afterwards that we hadn't done it for more, but it just, I don't know, Christmas programs and stuff, it just kind of, you give me an idea and I just kind of go with it. But I would always tell him, and he makes my props and everything. And when experience out at San Carlos, we were in Ward Council, and we had done a Night in Bethlehem and here, several years before. And so I wrote him this little note and scooted over to him. And I said, I think we should do Night in Bethlehem. And he goes, okay. And I said, I want to use all members of the branch. And he says, you bit off more than you can chew. We had 13 cast members in that Night in Bethlehem, and they were all members of the branch, and they were amazing. So that was my crowning glory, I guess,
Yeah,
But
we had made that. I took all the rails off of the chapel, the platform where the mic is, and we bought a bunch of plastic pictures, and they were huge.
I still got them.
I put those all around the chapel.
Town of Bethlehem. It's so different out there because your chapel is your cultural hall. I had a hard time getting used to that, but we loved it. And it touches people. It touches people to see something like that. I just got the video back, of the Easter thing that we did in all the rooms. Just got that finished. So it's nice to.
I think she's probably done 8 or 10 of those kinds of things over the years.
I don't even remember.
Big things.
And every time he says, this is the last one, but he jumps on board.
Well, you mentioned San Carlos, and you served in San Carlos. Brother Fountain, you were the branch president. Anything else you want to share about that experience being out in San Carlos? And I know you were very involved and cared a lot about Saints.
I'll tell about our calling.
Yeah, I was going to start by telling about a calling. We had been talking about, I retired at 57 years old, and we talked about wanting to go on a mission quite a lot over several years. And anyway, just before this calling, we were talking, we'd really like to go on a mission. And we were thinking pretty seriously about it because our family had kind of gone their way, and so we had some freedom.
And you sound like they left. They'd grown up.
And so at any rate, got a call from the state presidency. I think you got it, didn't you? And
he said, the state president would like to meet with you. And I said, okay. And he said, bring your husband. And I said, okay. So all the way over there, we're thinking, oh my.
Stake Relief Society.
And it was so nice because he called me in and just visited with me about my family. And he said, I'm going to let you go sit down and I'll talk to Jerry a minute. So he talked to Jerry for a while. And we're still going, it was President Dalton. And then he called us back in and said, we'd like you to go to San Carlos. And on the way home, I told Jerry, I said, we just got a mission call. And we were in the perfect place because he was consulting, but when he consults, it's, for a while and then he gets a project done. And we didn't have children at home. We didn't have a responsibility. And so we were able to serve in San Carlos like a mission. I mean, got up in the morning and said, okay, what San Carlos need today? Went to bed at night saying, what do we got to do tomorrow? And it was wonderful. We loved it. We had a choir. It was just the most rewarding thing. And our friendships out there are great. And he was a great branch president. He loved everybody. We had to go early so he could visit with everybody before the meetings. You're being filmed. Good.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
Mia, you get down. Get down.
Probably
get
out
down.
at San Carlos.
Stay.
5 out of 7 days a week. Wore out 2 cars, but we made eternal friends in San Carlos. And I still call them. We still see them occasionally. We'll go out to San Carlos. But we had 3 missionaries that went out of San Carlos while we were out there. And 2 of them were girls, and we got them into college after they finished their missions, and they both completed college. And then we had 1 young man, and he's doing well, but he didn't go to college. But that was one of the biggest things for me, and to every time I would interview one of the young people, I would say, and they were talking. I talked about college, and we talked about that, but then we would switch to missions, and I talked about, in my view, that a 2-year mission is equal to a 4-year college degree. And I would really, suggest that you give that some thought and serve a mission, and it will make a totally different person out of you, and you would be much more prepared for college and for your future. Well, we had 3 that we were able to get out, and I think it had been 20 years or more before since they'd had.
Sister Shorten was the last one, she said.
Sister Shorten was the last missionary from San Carlos, and that was amazing, and it was something that just touched my heart so deeply. But we had all kinds of things. I did all of the young men. We had about 20 of them that were coming to church, and we'd take them over to Safford to swim, or over to Safford to go to a movie, or we would go out on hikes, and just some neat young men there, and I fell in love with them all, and vice versa. We had a great time at San Carlos. We also did a lot of things. We actually put in I wouldn't call it a yard sale, but
We called it a giveaway.
a giveaway. And
That was our biggie.
we spent a year collecting things. My brother-in-law's dad passed away, and we hauled, I think,
7 truckloads.
7 truckloads and several carloads of stuff out of his house over to the church. We set it aside, but then we started bringing everything to the church. We filled every room, including the kitchen, with items, and the entire chapel and everything else. And so we advertised it. We opened it first to the members, and then secondly to San Carlos. And we had, I forget, 400 and something people that came through. We had 1 rack with about 5 dresses on it.
And we had about 3 coats left,
3
jackets.
coats, and there were a few shoes left, and everything else went. All the big furniture and everything else, we actually kind of put it in a lottery. You put your name on it, and then one of the, I think it was Elder
Missionaries, he drew it on his phone. Yeah.
Yeah, he set it up on the phone so that he could do a lottery. And so we had this sheet on each one. You put your name and your phone number on it, and we'll do the lottery and see who wins that particular item. And it was amazing that everybody that had their name on there that was selected came in, and either we hauled it off.
It was a great missionary
tool. But we had
and they were
about 150 from San Carlos that came through first, and we had, I don't know, at least 300
about 300
non-members that came through. And I set them down in the nursery, bring about 15 people in at a time. There was a long line out in the parking lot, and I talked to them about what this is, what it's for, and why
that we want to share.
We want to share, and we want this to be a great thing for St. Carlos. And so I'd talk about 15 minutes, and I'd send that group in, then the next group, and the next group, and the next group. And it was our ward people first, and then the outsiders. And one of them actually stood up and said, Brother Fountain, I can't believe that you're doing this thing. I've never seen anything like this, where, you're putting all this together, and it's so organized and it's so neat. I just want to thank you.
We had a great crew. Yeah.
But,
And they were all so respectful,
very respectful.
And
Carlos, we had about between 100 and 120 natives coming out, and it was so neat, just so neat.
And COVID, but that was the highlight of our old life.
Yeah.
Now we'll go on and do whatever, we don't know, but
It was the most difficult calling I've ever had, and she's ever had. But it was also the greatest callings that we both had.
yeah,
It was amazing, and really changed our lives and our love for the church and for people and
perspective,
and it was just an amazing thing.
opportunity.
So a couple of things. First, is there anything else that maybe as we've been going on that you thought of, I'd like to mention that? And second, I'd like to invite both of you to conclude with a brief testimony.
I did Boy Scouts here in Globe 2 for, I think it was about 5 years. We had a great troop, good time, and that was a challenge and a lot of fun. I remember at the mine we had some big rolls of aluminum wire, so I bought 3 big reels of it for $3. $1 per roll. And I talked them into it. So we brought it here at the house, and I had all the scouts come over once a week, and I got them big cutters. I mean, the cable was probably 1.25 inches in diameter. It had steel in the middle of it, steel wire. So we'd cut those things up, take the aluminum off, roll it up, and we'd store it. And so Mark Schellenberger and I, he had a truck and I had a truck. And so we took that down to Mesa and sold the aluminum. And we got about $1,500 out of that. And we got all of our scouts together. We had about 12 or 13. We took them all to Disneyland. And
That was a neat project.
never spent all the money, but
That was a
I
neat
think we still had
project.
a couple $100 left. But we had an amazing trip. And I got to know those kids so well. And it was a real heartthrob for me. It was a great time. So that was in the scouting. We've done a lot of other things, a lot of callings over the years, and
I think my favorite callings were I mean, you do what you do, but I liked Young Women's, loved Young Women's, and Girls Camp. Oh my goodness, we did Girls Camp for years. And the Achievement Girls. The Achievement Girls for primary. Those were neat experiences. They've all been neat experiences. When one door closes, another door opens, as we very well know. So
the trek was one of the big things that we did that I really liked and enjoyed. And I remember I had to go through attorneys in Mesa to get the old Gibson mine site so that we could camp there the first night, and then go all the way up to Brother, what was his name?
Cardin's
place up there. But that was pretty. I remember when we gave one of the girls in each cart. We had 10 carts, and we gave each of the girls and one of the girls in the cart a baby, a doll. And they said, "This is your baby. You have to take care of it." Then I remember we got about halfway up, and there was a place there where we'd selected that the baby was going to die.
They drew a number for the cart.
And so here's this girl with the baby, and we I forget how we did it, but we said, the baby has passed, and so we're going to have to bury it. So I got the girl out with the baby doll. We went up, dug a hole, put the baby in it, and covered up.
Those kids lived a trek.
And she was crying.
All of them were.
All of them were crying tears over that one. And we had the old gold miners that were up there, and they were sticking us up, and we had a little bag of iron sulfide, and it looked just like gold. We had little bags, and we had one in each cart, and here come these robbers out, and the old miners, and they were stealing all that gold from them. And that was pretty interesting as well. And then we went a little bit further, and we dropped a big tree. We got with the Forest Service, and they let us fell the tree across the road. So we did that, early in that morning. And here are all the carts going up the road, and we put it where there was a pretty deep creek on one side and a mountain on the other. And so this tree fell over against the mountain. Couldn't get the carts by. But I had put a big timberman saw, push-pull saw. I put it in one of the carts. So I got it out, and I had them get it out. And I was
didn't know what to do with it.
yards up the road behind the bush watching all this, me and a couple of guys. And so these two boys got the big saw out, and they were going to try to cut it. Well, they were both pushing at each other and pulling at each other. They could not get that saw moving. So one of our leaders kind of got them going. And then we switched guys, and those kids could not run a big handsaw. And so they decided, and I was listening to all this and making this a challenge for them. And finally they said, let's just get all of us boys together and let's lift this tree up and throw it down in the creek. And they did that. And then they all walked off, or they all got going again. We ran around a couple of turns, and then it was straight up to the ranch. And I took all the boys. Well, we had horses come down. Who was it?
McNeil.
At any rate, he came with a letter from President.
I don't know, Jerry.
One of the presidents of the church, and they were going to take. They had to take all of the men out of
To the Mormon militia.
and put them in the Mormon militia to go fight in California. And so the all boys took off, and we had them go all the way up the mountain to where the ranch was. And then the girls, of course, had to pull the carts up the hill. But one of them yelled, all the guys, "You guys come get your buckets." We had 5-gallon buckets with all of their stuff in it. They weren't going to carry pull those 5-gallon buckets up the hill. So all the boys came back and they got the 5-gallon buckets and they had to carry them up the hill. So we came on around the corner and Donna got with her daughter and they put together, what was it about?
These angels were in boys and girls, completely dressed in white. We sprayed straw hats and everything, and they were to come out of the bushes and get behind a cart, not make any eye contact or talk. They pushed the cart and then they just disappeared. And that was the most spiritual. And the boys were hurting because they felt so sorry for the girls.
Go down and pull those carts up.
It was a testimony builder. It was great.
Really got to the boys.
I think the kids really then appreciated what went on the trek, what really went on the Hardeck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember those statues up there? Did they burn, or do you know?
Sure.
That whole place.
I think they're still there.
Yeah, good. At any rate, that was a great event. But we've done so many things like that. I can't remember all of them, and most of them are her fault.
My fault.
But I loved it.
Very.
Well, would you be willing to leave with a testimony?
Sure.
Mhm.
I'm just grateful for, I'm grateful first and foremost, I guess, for my grandmother. She was an angel on earth. I'm grateful. I think I was born with a determination, or whatever you want to call it, that I've just always had a testimony, not a testimony of everything at once, testimony of prayer, testimony of tithing, testimony, but it's always been there. And I know that through striving to live the gospel, we have been blessed. I know my Savior loves me. I know I was a year ago spared from an accident, and that there's more in this life for me to do. And I will, I've told my Heavenly Father, I will do whatever I'm able to do. I know my Savior atoned for me. I know that with all my heart, I know that the gospel is the way to live. And I know all these experiences have helped us and strengthened us. And I'm so grateful for that. Go ahead.
Well, I am so grateful that I was blessed with my wife. She is very beautiful.
Jerry.
But she is an amazing person. And we have had an amazing marriage of 58 years. We also have had 2 amazing children and 12 grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And throughout our 58 years, the church has been our center. Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is what was our center and kept us centered. And, I'm so blessed to have had all of this. And I've been so blessed with all of my work activities over 50 years. And that never would have happened if it weren't for people like Lamar and Heavenly Father guiding me through lots of opportunities of improving my life and my stations in life. And I can't forget that. I know that the reason that occurred was because of my wife, our church, and some of the people along the way, Elder Dement, Lamar Kennard, several people from Inspiration.
Gosh, you couldn't mention them all.
I couldn't mention them all, but I've had a great life, and I'm just so, and start making me cry here, but I am so blessed over the years because of the church and because of our Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ.
And I do too. I thank you for letting us talk to you and to share these memories, and it's been great.
You've made a lot of these memories come back into light, so we appreciate that.
Well, we appreciate
memories.
you sharing these memories.
Mhm.
I'm sure the people will appreciate these for many years to come. So thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.